All right. Well, I think it looks like it's 2 p.m. Eastern, so we'll go ahead and jump into today's webinar. If you're joining us for the first time, our team is located at the University of Kentucky. We're funded by the National Institute of General Medical Sciences to provide support to faculty investigators, the trainees in their laboratories, and the research administrative staff at our 16 eligible institutions across the country. Our team engages in a wide variety of free support options for those populations. So if you enjoyed today's webinar, we encourage you to check out our website and see other ways that we can assist you as you seek funding or you execute a funded project. So today we're going to deviate a little bit and talk about something other than NIH funding. So we're going to look at the National Science Foundation as an alternative federal sponsor that could be a good fit for a project that you have in mind. As we go through the formal presentation, you're welcome to drop questions into the Q&A box at any point. We will hold those until the formal presentation concludes, at which point I'll share those with our presenters and give them a chance to respond. We are also recording today's webinar, so you're welcome to go back and watch it at any point after the live session concludes. Do give us a few business days to process and upload that video to YouTube, but you will receive an email link to the recording shortly. So with that, I will extend a warm welcome to today's presenters. We have Ms. Shauna Heron, who is the Assistant Director of UK's Proposal Development Office, joined by Dr. Martha Peterson, a professor in the UK College of Medicine, Department of Microbiology, Immunology, and Molecular Genetics. They bring different expertise about NSF as a funding sponsor and are going to speak to you today. So welcome.
Thank you, Melissa. Again, I'm Shauna Heron from UK's Proposal Development Office, and I'm also our agency liaison for the National Science Foundation. So I spend a lot of time helping faculty like you find good funding opportunities at NSF and help faculty develop NSF proposals. But today, if we could go to the agenda, Dr. Peterson and I would like to hit these 5 points about NSF for you all. First, to give you a general overview of what this agency is and what it does, and then to look at some specific funding opportunities and funding mechanisms that might be of interest to you. And then we'll analyze how you can determine if your work fits well with NSF and the unique requirements of NSF grant proposals. And finally, we'll discuss how NSF reviews proposals so that we can help you develop a competitive proposal if you decide to go forward. So what is NSF? It's been around, it's an agency that was funded nearly 75 years ago in 1950. And its vision, as you can see, is to create a nation that leads the world in science and engineering research and innovation, and to benefit all in our country without any barriers to participation. So you see those threads woven, that vision woven throughout all NSF funding opportunities. And it's really the only federal agency that focuses on basic non-biomedical research. And so you'll hear a lot from NSF program officers like, oh, we are a much smaller foundation than NIH, that they like to emphasize that. However, NSF did fund $8.5 billion in research grants in fiscal year 2022, and we have the data. So there's plenty of money at NSF. And if you look on the right side of the screen, it's really impressive. Again, they've taken out NIH as part of these percentages, but these are the percentages of all federal funding made in these basic science areas. So for instance, in biology, NSF, if you take out applied research from NIH, NSF is funding 2/3 of the basic research in biology. And if it's similar, up to 3/4 of computer science, basic computer science research is funded by NSF of all federal agencies. Next, please. And this is how NSF is organized. Similar to a university with different colleges, NSF has 8 directorates. is what they're called. Everything from biological sciences to social behavioral economic sciences with computer science and engineering, geosciences and physical sciences in the middle. There is a new directorate, new meaning within the last 3 years, directorate called the TIP Directorate, which is more applied than we've seen in the past at NSF. It's on technology, innovation, and partnerships, and it really came out of the CHIPS and Science Act. So that it's new exciting initiatives coming out of there. But within each directorate, if you look at the bullets under each, there are divisions. So similar to university departments, you'll see divisions within each directorate. So that's the general lay of the land. Next slide, please. Thinking broadly too about how to get your foot in the door, there are these broad funding categories at NSF that, if you're comparing it to NIH, those are my comparisons on the bottom, so nothing official from either agency. But these categories, if you start on the left side, program descriptions are similar to NIH parent announcements. They're standing programs, many without deadlines, especially in biology and the biosciences. They're really investigator-initiated funding opportunities. As you move towards the right, program announcements are more like PARs at NIH that have some, they're pretty broad, but they do have some specific guidance that you need to follow. And then moving closer to the right, program solicitations are more like targeted RFAs from NIH, meaning they will call for often collaboration among disciplines, special deadlines, special requirements. They're more targeted. And finally, at NSF, you'll see a lot of Dear Colleague letters come out. And often these are not new funding, but they are announcing topical areas within standing opportunities that that NSF is inviting applications for, similar to NIH NOCs, or Notices of Special Intent. Next slide, please. So how do you, to navigate this landscape of NSF, I'd invite you to start at the homepage, nsf.gov. It's a very user-friendly site. And those buttons in the middle of the page will get you far. And you can explore new NSF discoveries in the middle and announcements. You can see what they've funded in the past and the awards database on the right, and a database of funding opportunities on the left. But I'd encourage you to explore, as you're finding a home at NSF to apply to, I'd invite you to go to the focus areas. Next, please. And within that are the directorates again, and each directorate has its own page that looks similar to this. And I went ahead and went to biological sciences, since I think that's the likeliest overlap between an NIH audience and NSF. This is the bios directorates page. Read as much as you can, as much as you have time to. There's a lot of news about awards made, discoveries made from NSF awards, announcing new programs and opportunities in the middle, as well as descriptions of the divisions. But the main thing I'd like you to do here, if you have interest in this directorate, is to add your list and add your email and sign up for email announcements, because it's really important to stay current and keep up to date on everything going on. So you can see on the bottom left, just go ahead and sign up and start getting emails. And I will say bio is especially communicative. Each division has its own webinars and a lot of good opportunities to learn from program officers. Next, please. So within a directorate, you need to dig even deeper. And you can see that, again, there are about 5 divisions within biosciences, the bio directorate. So say that you are interested, you're doing work at the molecular or cellular level, you would probably go dig down into the molecular and cellular biosciences, or division, or MCB. And then within that, if you click on that, it opens up, okay, here are all the programs. This is the level that you would actually be applying to NSF. And again, sometimes it can be more difficult for some people, but a lot of researchers, a topic jumps off the page, such as, if you're doing work in genetics, there's a whole genetic mechanisms program. So if you click on that, a program page comes. And all programs at NSF have similar pages to this. You have a nice synopsis of the topics and areas that they're interested in funding. If there are some programs, this is as specific as it gets in terms of guidance for applications. And you use this program page and you use the general proposal guide, or what's known as the PAPG. This genetic mechanisms actually does have guidelines linked there that you can dig into. So you'd want to look for that. But then very importantly, there are program contacts or program officers listed on every program page. These are the people you're going to get to know as you go through this process. And then there's also a link, a blue button there to browse programs funded by this program. So I'd encourage you to hit that button, and we'll go next. And it takes you straight into the awards database, but very conveniently, the awards are already filtered for that program you're interested in. And you can filter it even more on the left in terms of size, location, and so forth. You can sort, as I did here, I believe, by the name of the awards, so that you can tell the types. The preface on the title will tell you the mechanism that it's attached to. You'll see a lot of collaborative research grants here, a career and eager. We'll talk about those mechanisms a little bit more. But each of these, you can click on the link and read the abstract, see who the program officer is that is attached to it. It gives you a lot of information about what types of grants are being funded by the program. You may even see a gap. My research is solidly in this programmatic area, but I don't see any awards in my immediate area. So it gives you some clues about what's missing to good topic of conversation with a program officer. Let's see, you'll see, can we get back 1 second? You'll see, besides these other specific mechanisms, you'll see a lot of awards are general research grants. And I will say at NSF, most research grants are 3 years. If you just see a plain topic list, plain title, no preface, it's a research grant, and they're generally 3 years long. A lot of variation in terms of what the budget can be according to what you need. So just keep that in mind. So I'm ready now. Click forward, please. Just keep in mind that as you're applying, you kind of have a three-legged set of guidelines that you need to follow. We saw the programmatic solicitation from our genetic mechanisms page. It's under this core program solicitation. So you have to review the solicitation as well as that general proposal guide I mentioned, the PAPG. Those are your two sets of guidelines. The PAPG will really give you, brass tacks. Here's the font I need to use. Here's the format. Here are the documents that are required and the sections within the program description that are required and the supplementary documents. All of that is in the PAPG. Solicitations may override or add some more detail to what's included. And then beyond, in addition to those two main documents, guidance you need to follow, there's also different mechanisms that you can use at NSF. And so we're going to look at some of those. Within the PAPG, there are some standing funding mechanisms. And you'll see these acronyms in the titles in the awards database. I don't want you to get too distracted by them because most funding is just 3-year research grants. But if, for instance, you were doing research in an area, if you're doing environmental biology research and there was a flood and you needed to gather data quickly, you could apply for a rapid grant. And as it implies, it's going to be fast review, program officer only, to get funding. When COVID came out, a lot of rapid grants were made to study the effects of COVID. And eager grant is more kind of like an R21, exploratory. It doesn't quite fit under one program. You can see if you scroll down, a goalie grant is a mechanism that you can use to engage with industry. There's standing conference awards. So this is all in the PAP guide. If you need a particular mechanism within your program, you can ask program officers about these. Next. But I want to dig into just a few more mechanisms that, you know, I think for this audience, for you all, if you're trying to get your foot in the door with NSF, I'd like to encourage you to look at these closely. And the first is for those of you at predominantly undergraduate institutions. There's this long-standing mechanism at NSF that I don't think is very well known. So I would really encourage you to talk to a program officer about it. And it has two tracks. One is the RUI, Research in Undergraduate Institutions, and it's a research grant. You apply from your undergraduate institution, and you can apply for direct funding. You'll be in this special pool to get reviewed without any R1s in the picture, so it's nice. You could also apply for shared research instrumentation under our RUI. And the second track, ROA, is if you had a collaboration with someone who was at a doctoral institution, they could either apply for a supplement on a standing NSF award that would fund your project at a predominantly undergraduate institution, or you two could apply together under that mechanism. There, again, no deadlines. Proposals are accepted anytime. You just really need to, speak with a program officer and make sure they're open to you applying to that mechanism. And then for those of you in the blue states, if you can see, there's a program at NSF called EPSCoR, established program to stimulate competitive research. So it's targeted towards these blue states that have a small percentage of NSF awards and funding amounts. And I will say with the CHIPS and Science Act, there is a mandate to increase funding over the next few years to these states. So if you are from one of these states, I'd really encourage you to apply to NSF and really know that your chances are going up. They want to fund EPSCoR state research right now. But I wanted to draw your attention to this one mechanism in particular. It's called EPSCoR Research Fellows. And again, you have to be at an institution within an EPSCoR state, and you have to be either an assistant or an associate faculty member. But you can apply. They're about $300,000 grant awards for 6-month projects that can be spread over 2 years. And what you're applying is to go to a host site, either another university that has greater capacity or instrumentation to do your work, or it could be a national lab or some sort of research center or industry partner. But you make the case that, in order to catalyze my work and to bring more research to my jurisdiction, this collaboration, this fellowship would really benefit us. It has a very high funding rate. So again, if you are in an EPSCoR state, I really encourage you to check this out. Okay, next, please. You'll see a lot. I mentioned it earlier briefly, but I'm sure you've probably heard of it before. The Career Award is a mechanism that is NSF-wide. It's their most prestigious grant. It supports kind of like an R01. It supports 5 years of work. The proposal, however, is not just for research, it's for integrated research and education plan. And you really have to make a strong case that this 5 years of support is going to set you up to be a leader in your field. But do check this out. NSF is open to supporting researchers at predominantly undergraduate institutions with careers and all over the map. Next, please. Finally, shifting a little bit from just your personal research, but to some other mechanisms that could support your work more broadly. There are other instrumentation mechanisms. I mentioned the ones through the RUI, but the MRI, or Major Research Instrumentation, will fund instruments going up to $4 million And you don't have to, you need to make a case in this application that it's going to, the instrumentation is going to help more than just you and your lab, but a general cluster of researchers. And so that, and that cluster doesn't have to be at just your institution. It could be a network of, you know, researchers in your region. So think about that as a MRI as a route for collaboration. And I put up here, there is a much larger scale instrumentation award that you can think about for the future. It's not a stepping stone early investigator one, but the mid-scale research infrastructure is there. And if there's a chance to collaborate on one, I would highly encourage that. And next. And then finally, just keep in mind that NSF is funding STEM education. If you want to focus your research on the teaching and education in your field, you could get funding from NSF at any level, informal, formal, undergraduate, graduate, postdoc. You know, the opportunities are there. I would say the most well-subscribed program here is called the REU for undergraduates, and you can apply to have REU either as a supplement or in with your research program to support a couple undergraduates, or you can apply for a site where you have an REU site where students from the region or across the nation come to your university and do research over the summer. So it's exciting. Next. And then finally, I just wanted to circle back. This is what if you haven't found any great opportunities or great home yet from going through these steps, I just wanted to circle back to that, you know, homepage button for the funding search database. And you can plug in keywords, filter it by institution type or education level. It's a good cross check too, just to make sure you haven't missed anything. Next. And so just to summarize, before I hand it off to Dr. Peterson, really encourage you to take these, you know, first steps to get going. Read a directorate site that you're interested in, subscribe to their mailing list, and then dig into a program and get to know it by reading the site, reading the solicitations, and looking at the awards database. And with that, I'll hand it over.
All right, thank you, Shauna. That's a great introduction. Just by way of brief introduction, I'm a faculty member here at University of Kentucky, and my research has been funded by NSF for my whole career. I'm in the College of Medicine, but I do basic biology research. But I also was a rotating program officer at NSF about 10 years ago. I went to Washington and spent 2 years managing the grant awards. And this was in MCB in the genetic mechanisms cluster. And so what I want to talk about today is from both of a PI perspective, but also from the program officer perspective. And because this is the SURE program is really focused on getting faculty and NIH funded, yet we're talking about NSF, I want to make sure that I make the distinction between biological research that's funded by NSF and how it's different from NIH. You can't just take an NIH proposal and send it to NSF. That won't fly, because NSF supports basic biological research to understand fundamental life processes, often using model organisms. If you look at the grants that are funded, you'll find all sorts of really bizarre things, some I've never heard of before, but model organisms that people have developed to answer specific questions about fundamental life processes. And you aren't going to see very much human, or you won't see any models of human disease. That's not what they fund. So they do not normally support research that, like I said, disease in humans, including the etiology, diagnosis, or treatment. And they don't normally support research to develop animal models of human disease conditions. However, they can support research that involves etiology, diagnosis, or treatment-related goals, as long as they also advance knowledge in engineering, mathematical, physical, computer, or information sciences. So bioengineering, assistive information technology, these are kind of things that do fall under NSF's purview. And this is the first time you're going to hear me say this, but this is if you're unsure, you really need to talk to a program officer. So coming back to the Biological Sciences Directorate and thinking about where your science might fit, we've got the division of MCB. That's where we're working for different molecules to cells. At the IOS, Integrative Organismal Systems, where we're looking more at organisms. So the physiology, behavior, development, neural systems, and the plant genome. They've got a lot of plant research that's funded. And then the other level of scale is the environment. So population, human ecology, ecosystem, and they also do evolutionary processes. And, in thinking about where your project might fit, like Shauna said, you read the pages of where you think it might, your first choice, but if you're sort of falling in between, this is where a program director can help. And there have been many times when a proposal is maybe co-reviewed between one of the MCB programs and one of the iOS programs. And the program directors know each other and they work across the different divisions. But NSF does value in interdisciplinary research. And you can find biological research funded through many other parts of NSF. So computer information sciences and engineering has things in bioinformatics. Engineering, there's sections on engineering, biology, and health. Geosciences has ocean sciences and biological oceanography. Mathematical and physical sciences has chemistry of life processes, mathematical biology, and physics of living systems. And when I was in genetic mechanisms, we knew the program directors in those areas, and there were times that we would share proposals because they sort of fell at the intersection between those two areas. And then social and behavioral and economic sciences has also biologically related research in that. And so a program director can help you find the appropriate program, especially if you're not sure where it might, I'm calling fuzzy boundaries, because they do try to look for strong interdisciplinary research projects. So before you submit a proposal to NSF, you really should discuss your idea with a program director to make sure that you can find the right home for it. And to do this is an email to the person who you think may be the most appropriate for your topic area. And as Shauna mentioned, if you look at the funded proposals, there's a program director's name associated with it. And if you find a couple of proposals that are, sort of in the general area of your research project, and they're associated with one program director's name, that might be the person to start with. But you send them a couple of paragraphs describing your project idea and ask to schedule time to talk with them. And they'll usually plan about maybe 30 minutes that you can schedule with them. You might mention that if you're new to NSF, that you're new to NSF and would like to get their advice. And so then they can provide guidance on your particular project and answer any other questions you might have about NSF proposals in general. And if the person you've selected is not the appropriate person, they should be able to send you to somebody who's maybe more closely related to your work. Be sure that you review the submission guidelines and be familiar with the proposal parts. This is the PAP-G, and there is a checklist there. And so I think is really helpful, especially when there are some required sections and maybe some optional sections to work through that checklist to make sure you have all the pieces put together. And then you have to be prepared to propose a project that'll be strong in both intellectual merit as well as broader impacts. And the broader impacts is something that is, I believe, fairly unique to NSF. And so we'll spend a few slides talking about that. So what does an NSF proposal look like? You have up to 1 page for a project summary, and this should summarize the intellectual merit and the broader impacts of the proposal. 2 paragraphs with different titles. So, you know, call out the intellectual merit, call out the broader impacts in 1 page or less. Then you have 15 pages for the project description. The broader impacts have to have their own separate labeled section. The intellectual merit really should be woven throughout. But really within this 15-page limit, there's room for flexibility as to how you organize and present your project information. There are additional documents that are required. All proposals need to have a facilities description, a data management plan, biosketch, and current and pending support. And I will say that the NSF format for biosketches and current and pending support are different from those that NIH uses. So make sure you're using the appropriate formats. And then if you have collaborators, you add in the letters of collaboration. And if you request support for a graduate student or a postdoc in your budget, you need to have a mentoring plan for those individuals. So the intellectual merit is the potential to advance knowledge and understanding within and across fields. This is what you sort of think about is what is the quality of the science and the project that you're proposing? And these are the review criteria that are given to the reviewers, and that reviewers are asked to address each one of these questions. To what extent are the proposed activities, do they explore creative, original, or potentially transformative concepts? Is the plan well-reasoned, well-organized, and based on a sound rationale? How well qualified is the individual or team to conduct the proposed activities? And are there adequate resources available, whether that's at your institution or you've made arrangements through collaborators to have what you need available to carry out your activities? But then there's this broader impacts, which is the potential for your proposed project to benefit society and contribute to the achievement of specific desired societal outcomes. And the review criteria are exactly the same as for intellectual merit. The reviewers are asked to address each of these questions and apply those to the broader impacts that you've proposed in your proposal. So are they creative and novel? Do you have a sound plan for carrying out those activities? Are you qualified to do this, or have you put together a team? And are there adequate resources available for these proposed activities? So NSF doesn't want to be prescriptive about what societal outcomes a project addresses. But they do provide examples of some of the desired outcomes, but they aren't limited to these. But these are some of the main things that you would normally see in proposals. Broadening participation. Have you made arrangements to make sure that the people who are participating in your project is available and enhances persons who are traditionally underrepresented in STEM fields? Does your proposal improve and expand STEM education? So does that improve STEM education or STEM educators at any level? For example, are you interacting with K through 12 teachers, for example? Outreach and public engagement. Is there anything in your plans that will help increase public scientific literacy and engagement with science and technology? Or will your work be able to inform public policy? Expanded infrastructure for research? Will your project increase partnerships between academia, industry, or other groups? Enhance the infrastructure for research and education? And then societal benefits. Does your work enhance national security, improve economic competitiveness, or improve well-beings of individuals in society? These are tall orders, but all NSF proposals have some component of these. And so you need to have a plan with goals. Like I said, you have to have a part of your proposal that's specifically called broader impacts. So you think about what gaps there are in your field that might address some of these areas in your community. Think about what you're motivated to do. What part of those broader impacts ideas are interesting to you. And it's really suggested that you focus on maybe 2 to 3 broader impact types. You don't have to do everything on that list, but you need to select 2 or 3 maybe that you're motivated to do and you want to incorporate into your project. You can ask for resources in your budget. If your broader impacts activities need resources, you can add that. That's perfectly fine. And you can also include collaborators for your broader impact activities. NSF on their website has, I think, a pretty good description of some broader impacts and ways to help you think about what it is that NSF might be looking for. But then there's also this group called ARIS that started as an NSF-funded project, this researchinsociety.org. They're all about broader impacts. So their website has a lot of resources, a toolkit, a guide sheet, and a broader impact wizard that will walk you through some questions that you should consider as you try to think about what might fit well with your project and your interest and your resources. And then I also put here that a really nice video about broader impacts from the Center for Ocean Sciences Education Excellence, where they have people talking, individual investigators talking about what they've done for their broader impacts and how those have been successful. So the proposal review process is different at NSF than it is at NIH in some respects. So you send your proposal into NSF and it's assigned to a program. You can suggest this, and hopefully ahead of time, your conversations with the program officers, you have a pretty good idea where it should go. And I put here that money programs have no deadline. So you submit when you're ready to submit, and they will review them within a specific time range. So however many come within a certain time, they cluster them together and get them reviewed by panels. There will be an initial administrative review where it's checked for compliance with the instructions, that all the pieces are there, whether it's appropriate for NSF, and if it's disease related, it can be returned without review. And so this is where, follow the instructions so that it passes the administrative review, so that it gets to the scientific review. And I'll talk about that again. There's both panel and ad hoc reviews that are usually done for the NSF proposals. And then once the reviews are complete, the decisions are made. And it's really the program directors who make the recommendations to select an award or select a proposal for an award or decline a proposal. And a lot of this is, and then once their recommendations are, they make the recommendations to the division director there's usually a several hour presentation of the portfolio of grants that they want to fund. And then the division director is the one who approves all that. But what's really important is this portfolio balance. And it's a lot of time is spent on this. Balance in terms of scientific areas. So if 5 proposals come in on one topic area, they can't fund all 5. They spread it around for different topic areas. There's institution types. So anywhere from R1 research institutions to primarily undergraduate institutions and all institutions in between. They want to have a balanced spread of the types of institutions. The geographic location of those institutions. As Shauna mentioned, there's those EPSCoR states that don't have as much NSF funding. And so geographic distribution of those institutions is important. And then the PI, are they new, mid-level, or senior level PIs? They want to have a range. And the gender of the PI, the ethnic background of the PI, all sort of come into play as making sure that the funded portfolio is as balanced as possible. So the proposal has to be really good, but they get a lot more really good proposals than that can be funded. And then this is where the selection comes in, the portfolio here. So the review process is most of the time, it's not, sometimes only panels do the review, but very often proposals are sent out for ad hoc reviews. So because when we put together a grant review panel, we can't have experts in every single area that's in the pot of proposals to be reviewed. So the program officers find experts in the field and send them out and ask them to review them. They're going to have they're going to be asked to evaluate both criteria, but they're not comparative, because these ad hoc reviewers maybe are only going to see 1 or 2 proposals a year at the most. The panel reviewers will not be specific experts, perhaps, in the specific subject, but they have access to those ad hoc reviews. So when they're coming to panel, they see their reviews as well as the expert reviews, and those are all incorporated into the panel discussion. And the panel reviewers also are comparing across the other proposals in the panel. Proposals are not rated by scores. They're given an excellent, a very good, a fair, or a poor. So those categories, no numbers. And because of that, really, I think the text of the review is going to be more important than that overall rating. So once you get either your proposal is funded or your proposal is declined, you receive feedback on that proposal. And I think the most important document here is the panel summary, because it describes the discussion that occurred among the panelists, and it is written by the panelists who reviewed the grant. And it will summarize the key strengths and weaknesses. So the points that were made in the discussion that most impacted how the panel felt about your proposal. And it's going to compare your proposal against all others. The panel summary may contradict 1 or more of the individual reviews. And I think you need to pay attention to the panel summary, because like I said, those are the points that were most impactful to the panel reviewers. And it will identify the proposal's category after the panel discussion. Each proposal gets placed into a category. Again, these 5, excellent, very good, good, fair, and poor. And that doesn't necessarily connect directly to whether a proposal is funded or not. Like I said, we go to that portfolio balance. So if something's in excellent, but they've already funded 5 proposals in that area, it might not get funded. And even if something is in good, because there's maybe some problems, but if there's something that's really the program director finds very exciting, it could be funded out of that category too. So it just sort of is a way for you to get a sense of where the panel thought the proposal was. You will get the individual reviews from the ad hoc reviewers and the panelists, but you won't know which is which. You're just going to get however many reviews. They have to have at least 3. I've gotten as many as 6 back because there are a lot of ad hoc reviewers that agreed to review the proposal. But once you get those back, especially if you have any questions, this is a good opportunity to contact your program director again, because they can help you interpret the reviews and decide how to proceed if you aren't funded on the first try. And NSF really, every proposal that comes in is new. There is not an opportunity to respond to previous reviews. Like I know NIH has an introduction that allows you to do that. You don't do that in NSF. And you don't want to refer to previous reviews because the reviewers reading your new proposal are likely to be different. They don't have access to your previous submissions or the reviews. So if you say anything about a previous submission, you'll only confuse your reviewers. You want to focus on the major issues that you've identified in that panel summary and perhaps with the program director discussion to improve your proposal. Maintain the integrity, the things that they liked, keep that in there. And then remember, there's no guarantee you'll be funded even if you respond to every concern, because every proposal is new. So this is my final slide. Talk to a program director before you submit to be sure that you can find the right program for you that fit for your research ideas. If your proposals decline, they can help you interpret the reviews and figure out your next steps. Even if your proposal is funded, staying in touch with your program director can make sure that you're aware of new funding opportunities for you and your students. For example, grant supplements. Shauna had mentioned that there are one category, but there are ways that you can request specific supplements. And they also want to know about your project successes. You know, any kind of outcomes. I mean, you have to do an annual report, but if something exciting happens before that in the annual report, let them know. That's how they get the stories for the NSF website. As you toggle through all the website there, their successes from NSF-funded proposals. So that is the end of my presentation. Should I stop screen sharing here, Melissa?
You're welcome to leave your slides up in case you'd like to go back and reference something. So I'll start with the Q&A box, but it looks like we have some questions in the chat as well. So the first question in the Q&A box says, which NSF division is related to health technology research?
I'm not sure. I think you'd have to look through. We're giving a high level overview. I don't know, Shauna, if you know what that answer is.
I mean, there is this new TIP directorate, which is technology and a little more translational than some other divisions of NSF. I did answer a few questions in the chat as they were coming in. So I shared a link there about, you know, and people are asking, does NSF fund this area of research? I would go to the awards database, plug in your keywords, what technology are you talking about, and see if there are any awards. In general, you will find, and this touches on a question someone else asked about SBIR, STTR funds for small business support from NSF. It does exist, and that's where you see NSF that's where you see the most grants, I think, in terms of NSF touching on health devices or technologies. But again, there might be a special call that would touch on your research. So see what's been funded and see what program officers are attached to those awards, and you might be able to have a conversation and see some opportunities.
Great, thank you both. The next question asks, are there any NSF grant mechanisms particularly well suited for co-principal investigators?
I would say nearly all. Career is the one where you can't have any co-PIs. It's really an award for you to stand out.
And there are those collaborative grants. So in that list that Shauna showed by alphabet, there's collaborative proposals, and those are between two different institutions. So yeah.
It's very common to see collaboration.
Okay, next question asks, for the EPSCoR Fellows, can I apply if I am on my way to also applying for full professorship? How much room does it leave with that type of situation?
You have to, if you were applying before you became a full professor, even if you're on your way, your package is circulating. I mean, if the applications for that program are due in April of each year. So if in April you're still an associate professor, you could still apply for that program.
Okay, this question in the chat says, we have a lot of partnerships with private for-profit companies, so biotechnology, medical devices. How does NSF see university private for-profit collaborations, including federal funding shares to these companies?
I have no idea. I'm sorry, that's not an area that I know about. I don't know, Shauna, do you?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I mean, I would definitely, talk with a program officer about what you have in mind. Yeah, it depends on the program, and the NSF definitely does fund. You'll see in the awards database there are some grants going to private companies. But just make sure it's framed in a way and the budget reflects priorities of that program.
Okay, next question. How many months should you expect for RUI proposals to be reviewed? Having some trouble establishing a project start date. If I submit in January, could I expect an answer by May?
Oh, they do try to keep the review cycle pretty short, especially now that they have no deadlines. It's a little tricky, but I don't know that you could definitely get a yes or no decision by then, especially if your proposal might be on the cusp of maybe being funded, like NIH. Their NSF is working with the government's funding cycle of, new budget starts October 1st, unless we're on a continuing resolution. And so a lot of times proposals are held till the August timeline when they get the final amount of money that they have to spend, and then there's a flurry of activity. So that's something that you could discuss with a program director to see what their timeline is in their particular directorate for that.
I think 6 months is a pretty good estimate for, for how long it will take to hear. So, and then if you set your start date for 6 months from your submission and it needs to get pushed back a little bit, it can be adjusted after post-award.
Yeah, that's true, Shauna. That the date that you put on your cover sheet is an approximate date. Yeah.
Let's see. Does NSF support health informatics as well? More medical data science type of work?
Again, I'm not sure. I think you would have to look maybe in the informatics, the computer section, wouldn't you say, Shauna?
Yeah. And just remember, NSF's overarching mission is basic science and engineering. And so, your proposal, it could have a health application, but really, I would say the bulk of the projects funded by NSF are figuring out some basic science question. And so if the core of your proposal is about improving informatics, and you happen to be applying it to health informatics, I think you could have a possibility of finding a home at NSF. But know that you've got to have this basic question that's solving a problem in your field or filling a gap of knowledge in your field.
And this is a really good opportunity when you talk to a program officer, they can help you frame your question in a way that is appropriate. Like Shauna said, that this is the fundamental question, and the data sets that I'm using maybe are biomedically related, but we're trying to answer a fundamental question in our field.
And we have a few questions about NSF budgets. Can you share anything about typical funding amounts for a 3-year grant, or share if there is a maximum funding amount allowed?
There's no maximum. I mean, I think again, if you're looking in the awards database, you'll get an idea very quickly. It's like, oh, here's the range of grants they're making. And so that's your clue. But if you needed some expensive instrument, you can make the case. NSF program officers always say, make the case, and we're open to listening, but just be realistic. If you see in the awards database a particular range, that's what you should stay in that area.
And actually, if you ask a program director, they will say, ask for what you need and make sure that it's reasonable. Because I mean, reviewers know if approximately how much things cost. So make it fit your project.
Okay, this question is asking if the review panel will have any idea if or how many times you've applied to the same mechanism in the past.
They shouldn't, unless they happen to have seen it in a prior review cycle. But the panels are generally put together each time around. There's sort of a broad base of reviewers, so there is a chance that somebody might have seen it before, but there is each proposal's new.
Okay, this question is asking if there is any mechanism to volunteer to be a reviewer for NSF grants.
Do you know of one, Shauna? I mean, other than offering your services to a program director, I don't know if there's a place you put your name in for.
No, that's what I would do, is email a program officer with your CV and let them know you're interested. Every presentation I've been to recently with NSF, they really value people who volunteer, and it's such great experience for you if you're interested in applying. So I'd really encourage you to do that.
And ad hoc reviews are really can be a challenge for the program directors. So we have to generally ask quite a few people to get the number of ad hocs, because not everybody says yes. And so if you were to get your name in there and as a first time around, be an ad hoc reviewer, yeah, that would be great experience for you to see a proposal.
Okay, we're almost at the top of the hour, so we'll finish up with one question, but I will remind those in the audience that they're welcome to reach out to our team for follow-ups by email. This question is asking if those that are not in tenure track positions are eligible to apply for NSF mechanisms. So someone who's in, say, a lecturer position.
It's not as common, you know, but if your institution supported your time, you know, and approves you as a PI, NSF doesn't set the stipulation of who can be a PI, honestly. They make awards to institutions, and they allow institutions to make that decision about who's eligible. So talk with your department, see if there's a mechanism in place on your campus if you want to apply.
And if you have any concerns, I think there's an opportunity in your proposal to talk about the resources that you have available and the time and your expertise, you know, to justify your expertise to do the work.
All right. Well, thank you both for an excellent presentation today. Again, our team remains available to assist. So if you've got follow-up questions, certainly feel welcome to reach out to me and I can connect you with somebody on the team. All right. Thanks all.
Thanks.